I think I'll read a couple more pages of this thing and then we can go to somebody else. So at this point in the story now, Taiko and my brethren, they are in New York going to school and having children. Just welcome the first kid. And let's take it from there. After a couple of years, with her degree in the bag, we decided to leave New York and head for Jamaica. We rented a house in Irwin, in the hills above the city of Montego Bay, and Taiko got a job teaching at the University of the West Indies campus in Mobay, while I took on the job of corralling a bunch of hard-case third form boys as their form teacher at Cornwall College, while teaching English language between that school and its sister institution across the street, Mount Alvernia High School for Girls.
Hey, Alvernia! Sorry.
Mount Alvernia. Yeah, Mount Alvernia Girls. Alright. As for Akiko, who was now 3 going on 4, her sunny personality had made her a hit at her infant school, and she soon made fast friends with the neighbors' kids and her preschool classmates, and she was as happy as a lark. She especially loved when we took her to the beach on Sunday mornings, and soon, with that ready adaptability that most children have, she could soon swim like a fish, and her happy squeals as she splashed around was music to our ears. It was also fun listening to her learning to speak patois. And of course, again, like kids do, she absorbed it like a sponge, and in no time she could speak patois as fluently as any of the kids around her. At the same time, Akiko's English took on a Jamaican accent, and we also made sure her Japanese was not neglected, as she attended language lessons on Saturday mornings at the Japanese consulate in Montego Bay. The small group of kids in the class, taught by a Japanese teacher attached to the mission for that purpose, mostly comprised those of employees of the embassy and Japanese companies that had offices in the city. There were also a couple of kids whose parents worked at hotels along Gloucester Avenue and the Sunset Strip. Her mother also spoke to her in Japanese. In our second year in Jamaica, June came along. Although that pregnancy had been a bit difficult, the doctors and nurses at Cornwall Regional Hospital, led by my cousin Martin, in his role as our family physician, had been a source of great comfort. And they did an amazing job with Taiko. We gave June a middle name, Martin, as a mark of our appreciation of his efforts. Our son's arrival, for me, was the icing on the cake. I felt blessed and I was thankful beyond measure to my family. During the pregnancy and afterwards, as I had with Akiko, I tried my best to be as supportive and to carry my share of the myriad additional responsibilities that inevitably arose, alongside the existing ones. The pregnancy had left Taiko exhausted. Thankfully though, the university offered a generous amount of time off from work, so she had been able to rest a bit. But she had also been uncharacteristically depressed. Not just from the postpartum exhaustion, but also, she eventually confessed, from the fact that she missed Japan, especially her parents. We had been away from Japan for about 8 years and had not been back during that time. Taiko's parents, anxious to see their daughter and grandchildren, had visited us in New York and in Jamaica, but they had seemed uncomfortable being away from Japan, and they had especially disliked Jamaica. They found the sight of madmen on the street disconcerting, the local dialect patois incomprehensible, and generally the whole experience of being in Jamaica, a place the polar opposite of Japan, in terms of its character, overwhelming. And after the week they stayed, having originally planning on staying a month, they could not wait to board the plane at Sangster International and leave. Their pointedly negative reaction to my country and countrymen, and my long-standing stiff relationship with them, had made it a tense and nerve-wracking week, and their premature departure had hurt Taika deeply, and it seemed she blamed me for what had transpired. Whenever I was around my in-laws, I had always done my best to be civil and respectful. This time had been no different, despite the fact that the antipathy between me and them had clearly not abated, as was evident from the day I picked them up at the airport. My good behavior notwithstanding, Taika said I was the reason why her parents had cut their visit short, and this disagreement led to sharp, scathing comments on both sides, punctuated by stony silences. It was like someone had dropped a wet blanket over our lives, and things were never quite the same after that. Although she seemed to have enjoyed teaching at the university up until then, reveling in the performances of her students, who, she said, really applied themselves and challenged her to keep up with them, Taiko started to complain and find fault. She claimed her classes and her work at UA did not stimulate her anymore. Even little things that previously she had ignored and had seemed to have been of little consequence now started to bug her. She couldn't get things like miso in the supermarket. She found the taste of the sushi at the Japanese restaurant at the hotel we sometimes went to for dinner not to her liking. She even had a problem with our helper, Maisie, speaking to the children in patois. I was busy with my own job, which I enjoyed, and I was happy to be at home in Jamaica, a mere 2-hour journey by car from my own folks in Clarendon. The kids were also doing great, and for a while I had ignored what seemed to me, in retrospect, to have been the warning signs. The silences, the extended conversations with their parents on Skype that ended as soon as I entered the room, the arch looks, the bitter tones that she accused me of one silly thing after another, like accusing me of staying out too late. In truth, I had maintained exactly the same schedule I always had, including my habit of meeting some of my friends on a Thursday night for a couple of beers and a game or two of Skittles or Dominoes. She knew all the guys and had joined us on more than one occasion. Now, apparently, that was a problem. A little bit further. Here we go. Then came the crying jags. We eventually saw a counselor who said it was just a temporary case of postpartum blues on Taiko's part, that was at the root of our problems, and that with time and effort on both our parts, it would eventually pass. As always, I tried my best to be supportive, and after the period of counseling, I felt that though things had not got back to the level they had been before, at least we were on the right track. As I sat in the restaurant watching Taiko, I remember the day when things had finally come to a head. I'd had a tough day at school, and what with a less than welcome reception at home, I had been a bit more short-tempered than usual when I got there. Taiko, as had become the norm, had found something to be picky about. And fed up, I had yelled at her, telling her to put herself together and to grow up and cut the crap. That it was my life too, and that there was a limit to how much I could put up with. I then stormed out of the house, jumped into the car, and headed for my favorite bar, Pier 1, where I sat nursing a shot of whiskey for several hours until I cooled down. As I calmed down, I reminded myself that although I was having it tough, Taiko had had an even tougher time, stranger in a strange land and all that, and that I owed it to her to remain calm and cut her some slack. I got up, got into the car and drove back home, stopping only to pick up a bottle of our favorite wine and a bouquet of flowers as a peace offering. As I drove into the garage, I just got the feeling, somehow, that something was wrong. And it was not because her car was missing, even at that hour. We both kept odd hours at times. No, it was something else. And I did not quite know what it was. I walked up the steps to the front door, unlocked it, stepped in, and it was the quietness that hit me first. All the lights in the house, it seemed, were on, but I did not hear the kids arguing and running around as they normally would be, nor was the TV or stereo on. There was always music or cartoons on, or both. With two rambunctious kids and their friends constantly in and out of the place, the house tended to be rather noisy. I also did not see my wife. I called out, but there was no answer. A deep feeling of dread gripped me as I ran upstairs and from one room to another looking for my family. But they were gone. The swinging doors of her closet in the master bedroom and the missing suitcase and clothing spilled across the beds and onto the floor in both our bedroom and the children's told the story eloquently. She had taken our children and left. Peace more to come.
Thank you.